Thanks. As I said, I'm back. I have a nice, I think it's even Uganda coffee that I'm drinking, so that's very nice. But before we go to the second part, I would like to hear from two persons about this selection of the case. So if I may invite the first person who spoke about her shoes, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but would you tell us now what are you going to be writing about in this particular article?
Thank you very much. My article is basically a business article, which is developing briquettes. And this is a youth initiative that is being promoted to give them employment, but also to for an environment conservation project. So this is what I'm going to write about, and how they market the whole processing of the of developing the briquette, and at the end the marketing of it, and how it has improved their livelihoods.
Good. Now, may I ask you? You say you're working with youth. You are interested in employment. You are interested in marketing, so incomes. Why is it that your case will be more interesting than other people writing about youth or markets? Why do you think you...
This project is basically it was the idea was initiated by the youth themselves, having seen the challenge and also the demand that is in the area for affordable charcoal, for affordable source of cooking.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
No, because I like very much what you are saying, but I think you have to emphasize this. Your article is going to be different. It's going to be more interesting because it is not just any initiative with youth. No, it is an initiative that the youth themselves started, that they came to find out how to go about it or what to do, isn't it? So that makes it a little bit different. That makes it a bit more special. This is This is a very good example of what I'm trying to show here. You have to make sure that your stories are different. You have to make sure that your stories are better than the others. So you have to say, okay, in this particular case, the youth themselves were doing this, or they did something which other people had not thought of, or they were working in a way that nobody else was working. All of those ideas, if you describe and if you analyze that, then you're going to have a story which is more interesting than the other people. So that's very good. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we hear about somebody else?
Yes, I put up my hand. Can I say something?
Please, Beatrice, yes.
Okay. This is a story about rabbitry or rabbit farming for climate smart agriculture. And how unique it is. Most of the people who are promoting it for food and income and all that for the youth, but nobody really has thought through about the climate, how, you know, for the climate smart, them as climate smart agriculture or rabbitry. And so when you even go on the internet, most of the stories about it is how they destroy the environment in Australia, but that has changed. And they actually can be for, you know, for climate smart agriculture. So that's what is one of another case stories which we are developing under offers. And we think it will be fine-tuned by the end of this of this training. And the information, I mean, there is right now many farmers are going in it and whatever. And I think we can come in to enhance that part of where it is towards climate smart agriculture.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And again,
I want to understand a bit more, Beatrice. How is rabbit farming working towards climate smart agriculture?
Okay. One of the biggest issue, like for the big animals, especially in Uganda, like when you think about cattle, is the overgrazing. Now, being small, they need small space. And so you are not likely to have the issue of overgrazing. And then another one is you find that you produce more meat than what you produce for small animal, I mean, from the big animals. If you analyze, they talked about analyzing. When you analyze, you find that out of a very small space, you get more meat. And then another one is rabbits not being herbivorous. They actually don't produce ozone. I mean, they don't produce methane, which is likely to destroy the ozone layer. That one, of course, we get it from the information, the written information. So there's a few, but there are others.
Yeah.
Also, it's healthy. When we talk about the other side, it's also healthy meat. It's one of actually the healthiest meat.
Well, so I can imagine a title like rabbits saving the world, saving the planet. But the question that the people will immediately ask is what I just asked you. So you have to provide a lot of evidence, and here the story will also be a bit scientific. So there will be a story, something funny and something that anyone will like to read. But then you have also to provide some very hard data from somewhere. Is that what you intend to do?
Yeah, I think that's what we are going to do.
And this,
as I said, that we have to out of this training, we are going to see how we fine-tune these case stories so that they can actually, as he said, they can sell, they can attract people to read. They're not just like the usual.
So
actually,
I start to be convinced now.
Pardon?
I'm convinced now. By the way, I'm also raising rabbits. Huh?
Oh.
So you have already one person who's going to be reading your story. Yes.
Okay, but were you thinking about it in that angle?
No, not that angle. Yeah.
Then it is new and unique. Okay.
Now let me continue. Let me continue with it, because I think that the content, the whole content in this case of the rabbit story, that's what we're going to be talking right now. But before thinking of the content, we have to be very clear of the idea that we want to share, and especially why do we want to share this idea?
I thought you would take one more.
Now there are 4 hands raised.
Oh.
Yes, I raised my hand first. Yeah, I think we need to give you one from Nigeria, and then we'll see whether we are in line.
Go ahead.
Okay. My apology. Good morning, everyone. So for the assignment, what am I planning to write on? I want to do a success story on an initiative in producing and promoting weather resilience varieties, specifically drought-tolerant varieties. In northern Nigeria, for last year, for example, we had about 6 weeks cessation of rainfall in the middle of the farming season. And that led to a lot of crop loss, especially maize. So there are these varieties that have been developed on weather resilience, drought tolerance, specifically maize. So why is this important? Why is it? Why do I think it's an important story? Because farmers are losing their crops to drought. Yeah. Because climate change challenges are real, and they will still to face a lot more. And also because there is a need to increase farmers' profit despite this the drought. So I tend to do a story with farmers that have been using these varieties to get the impact where they were, and especially to tell us what they have got from these particular varieties during the drought. Mm-hmm. I will have to liaise with the research institutes, the extension organization that have been promoting them, and of course the farmers. I will also need some documents concerning the varieties and of course the project participants. Thank you.
No, thank you, Godfrey. If I may say something, I think that you are raising a very important issue, and this is directly related to the relevance that I was saying. Your stories have to be relevant. Your stories have to be interesting because they are showing or they can show that a problem is being solved. So if you say, for example, drought and that farmers are having a lot of problems because of the lack of rain, then you are immediately saying, yeah, this is a problem, this is interesting. And readers are going to be wanting to read your story. It is the same as the previous case. If the author is going to be talking about how cattle is overgrazing and causing a lot of problems, then the rabbit story becomes interesting, isn't it? So I think that both of you are showing that you are going to be writing a nice case. But what I wanted to say is that it is not just nice because the idea is nice or interesting or relevant. It also has to be interesting and relevant in the work that you were doing or that you have been doing. So remember that we are talking about an experience. So if you tell me about weather resilient varieties, I would also like to show that what you were doing is very interesting or different than what other people were doing to solve the same problem. A lot of people are trying to do something against drought, in the same way that a lot of people are trying to do something against overgrazing. Remember to focus not just on the problem, but also on the specificity of the solutions that you have been testing. So in the case of these weather resilient varieties, show me how special, how interesting, how new, how wonderful the work that you did has been. Okay? No, I hope you follow me. So remember that
they are all following.
Yes,
you even have four hands raised from
yes.
Cameroon, from Chocote and Winston. Maybe Mercy have already talked, so maybe we can give the floor to others now.
Let us take one question and then we go to the next bit and we will have time to discuss again. Yes?
Debel, do you have something?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Hi, good morning.
Yeah. Okay, let me start. Would you like to have the best quality fruit in front of your house? Imagine you could harvest it just by raising your hands. Now, imagine many people want it and you could have it in your farm. Will you be happy to get money from it? Trees, by stocking carbon dioxide, preserve the environment. You can enjoy the experience of grafted seedlings and get a reward, harvest it just before 3 years. That is it, the core of the story.
Fantastic. So you are now even putting it in a nice way. So not just a nice story, but presenting it in a nice and more attractive and more convincing way. That is exactly what we want to have at the end of the day, that your story becomes very, very attractive for the reader. Now, remember what I said at the beginning, there are millions of stories. The internet is full of stories. You have to make sure that yours is better than the others, because otherwise nobody's going to read it. So if you have the great subject, people will read it. And if you present it in an attractive way, like Bebel has just done, then people are going to listen to you. And that is what you want. So we still have a long process to go, and we still have to fill it up, and we have to still think of the content. But I think it is very important that from the very beginning, you think that you are not just writing anything. No, you are writing some nice, interesting story that people will want to hear from you. You have to get the attention of the reader, because otherwise the reader will go somewhere else. It's very cruel, but that's how it is. If you don't get the attention, and like Bebel did from the very beginning, trying to catch your attention, do you want this? I'm going to give you the solution. If you don't do that, the reader will go somewhere else. So we have to make a good choice. Fortunately, you are all doing fantastic things. I have no doubt about it. I am 100% sure that you have a super interesting experience. So the exercise now, and in this very first part, is think a little bit of what part of your work is going to be so exciting that everybody will want to hear from you. That is what we have to start writing about. Yes? Let me go continue with the second part, and then we do a little bit break to come back to this. All right? If I may share my screen again. Once we have, I think you're seeing it now.
Yeah.
Okay, you see that there is a number 2. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, once we have selected what we're going to be writing about, and once we have more or less planned how we're going to be going about it, we have to start collecting information, and we have to start doing something with this information. So this is what we say, okay, the second part, and I'm going to divide it into 2 sub-parts. The first part, why do we do this, is because there's a lot of information. If I'm going to be talking about rabbits, there's a lot of information out there, and even there's a lot of information about my own experience. So I have to see, okay, what part I'm going to be putting in, and where am I going to get that information from? How am I going to organize it? What is interesting? What should go in? What should not go in? All of those things you have to think a little bit about. Because remember that you are going to be writing an article. So let's say an article, I don't know how long it will be, but let us say that it's going to be 10 pages long. 10 pages is not so much. You are not going to write an encyclopedia. You are not going to write a book. So you have to be a bit selective, what goes in and what goes out. No, this is when we start looking into the content itself. And once again, I repeat, you cannot put everything. Imagine Bebel came with a very nice introduction of his story. It sounds very attractive. I really want to read it. But if he gives me 400 pages, I'm not going to read it. Not because I don't like it, but simply because I don't have the time to read 400 pages. This is like my students at the university. I tell them, please don't give me more than 20 pages because I'm not going to read your exercise. And not because I don't like you, but simply because I can't. So if you are the writers, you have to select. Now, what are we going to select? What are we going to be writing about? Basically, if we are thinking of an experience, that means something that has happened. Basically, to put it in a very simple way, we have to think of 3 moments. The first one is the initial situation, as you can see here. How is the situation, let's say, before? No, yeah, what happens? Who's there? What is the context? Who joins? Who didn't join? I mean, what was the situation at the beginning before you started working? The second moment is the intervention process itself. So what did you do? You went to the field, you did some training, or you bought some products, you shared some inputs, I don't know, you engaged different people, etc., etc. And the third moment is the situation afterwards. So what do you see after your intervention? There are results, there are very clear benefits. What are these benefits? How has the situation changed as a result of the work that you did? So, of course, this looks very simplistic, but basically that's what we tell when we describe an experience. When you talk about an experience, remember, it is the work that you have done. It is not theory, it is not just abstract concepts, but we are talking about the work that you did. So in order to present the work that you did, basically we have to put it like this. What did you do? No, what did you find at the beginning? What did you do? And what are the results? Now, how do we do this? One way of doing this, which I find very useful, is to think of a timeline. And you can see in this photo the example of the timeline. And I'm sure that you have all been doing this. You draw a big line on the wall, and then you start by identifying time periods. Now, so for example, at the beginning, in the middle, at the end, or you can say the month of January, the month of February, the month of April, the month of March, I don't know, whatever. Once you have this time period, you start filling it up. You identify what are the special moments, the special events, the turning points around your experience. And then you start identifying what are the key activities or the key results according to each one of the moments. So this is a very simple way to start, to start structuring the information that you have and start giving shape to this original idea of an article. And this is very easy because you can just do it on a piece of paper and start, as I said, organizing your ideas. Now, what you put, if you do this with other persons, you can put this with color cards, or you can, I don't know, do it in the easiest way you want. But basically what you try to identify is key moments or key activities according to a time period. Another possibility of doing this is to simply to organize questions or charts, like templates, we may say also, to try to identify what have been the key elements of your experience and what have been the key activities and what have been the key results. So basically it is the same idea as with the timeline, but we don't put it as a line, but more as a list of questions or as a list of let's say, chapters. And you can organize these chapters, let's say, geographically. If you work in different districts, you can say, this is what happened in District A, and this is what happened in District B, etc., etc. Or you can simply put a list of questions as a template. And this is something that FAO, for example, was doing quite a lot. You develop a template and you put questions, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and blah, blah, blah. You just answer those questions. And for each one of them, you start developing more information and filling it up. So actually, it doesn't really matter how you do it, but the idea behind this is that you start filling the content. You start saying, okay, I'm going to be talking about rabbits. Okay, what about rabbits? So you start filling it up. We did this and we did that and we did this and we did that. and trying to organize it in a certain way that it makes sense. Now, to put it simply, as I said, something that makes sense is talking first about the initial situation, talking about what you did, and then talking about the results in these three separate parts. Very short, what we want from this first part is to describe the process. So when we think of a description, we need to answer these questions. What did you do? What were the objectives? With whom did you work? For how long were you actually active? Where did you work? And then, of course, what were the results? And what happened with all of this? What has been the impact? What has been the change? Yes? This is, let's say, the boring part, because you're just describing. You're just telling what happened. And this is something which, yeah, I call it a bit boring, basically because it is something, yeah, not so difficult. We are all very good in describing. That's not something where we have a problem. If you want to, I don't know, share with your colleagues whatever has been happening in the field, we are very good. We just tell and we just answer these short questions. So as part of the assignment, I would like you, no, we can pause for a few minutes, but basically this is not that difficult. You can also do it afterwards. What I would like you is this idea that you have, that you're going to be writing about, now we have to start filling it up. So filling it up, answering these few questions. What were the objectives of your experience? What did you want to achieve? What did you want to solve? The second question is, where were you working? When? With whom? What have you been, before we say what have you been doing, what was the context which you found when you went there? So if, for example, we're talking about, what was it? The youth employment case. What is the context? The context might be that young people don't have opportunities, that there is a lot of migration, that there is a lot of unhappiness between the young people, or maybe that there are a lot of young people who simply don't have a job because they don't have land. I don't know. No, but you have to try to describe a little bit so that the reader also gets some idea of where are you, and because it may be that the reader comes from a different country or from a different place and doesn't know anything about the place where you're coming from. Once we have this context, then comes the details. What did you do? The key activities. What happened? What were the steps that you take? What were the inputs that you used? What were the resources? Who did what? And then comes the most interesting part, which is the results and the difficulties that you experienced. When we talk about results, we are thinking of outputs, but we're also trying to think about outcomes. What happened? What was the impact of all the things that you were doing? What is the change? Now remember the difference of the situation right now as compared to the situation before. And then we come to the last part, which I would especially encourage you to think of. What were the difficulties that you faced? What was all those things that didn't happen as they had to happen? I emphasize this last bit because many times we write stories which are all very positive, and we forget to say the negative bits. But those stories may look very nice, but nobody believes in them. So because there's a question of credibility. And if you don't believe the story, then you are not going to follow the recommendations. You're not going to be so interested in it. And I say that we don't believe in it because we all know that in life, we always have difficulties. We always have problems. There is no job which has no difficulties. So if you don't mention them, it sounds as if you're not telling the truth. So it is very important that on your stories, you add these difficulties, you add the things that go wrong. Not because we want to I don't know, we don't want to say that we are bad professionals. That's not the point. The idea is to give credibility to what we are writing. And people are going to believe in us if we show things the way they are in reality. And as I said, we always have difficulties. There's always something that doesn't go according to plan. So we have these 6 elements. So what I would like you to start doing, and which you can do after this session today, is to start filling this up. Just write down your ideas. Why, where, what about the context, what did we do, what did we find, and what were the difficulties. Put it on a piece of paper, write down as much as you want, without any order, without any structure, just do as a sort of system that collects your ideas. Yes, I hope you're following me.
Yes, there is one question or one concern from Beatrice here. Maybe she can just explain it now.
Please.
Yes, I can. You know, when I'm listening to all this, you know, remember that we are going into the CSA, and maybe apart from like what Nigeria shared, but there are those at one time, I think when Botswana said that there are extension experiences which you may have to, of course, it's not that you don't do any research, you do more research and come up. But when it talks about objectives, where, and then all the way up to results, it means that is something which you have been doing and then targeting to show how climate smart it is. And remember, some of these are like what people have is what they have in the field, like they've been having maybe organizations, but not really something very specific, like they have started on that research on like what he's asking us to do. So he needs to advise us, because it means that if we are now talking about CSA, apart from those things like the varieties he talked about and all that, we are going to miss out on many other stories. Maybe, I agree that we have to have evidence, but maybe we may not have for each of them where you really started on the project and then what are the results. The results are, and remember, this is concerned about climate smart agriculture.
I hope I can try answer your question, but when we're going to write about a story, you are not going to write about CSA in general. So the point is not to write about theory of CSA in general, as applicable to all countries. I think that is not what we can do, because it is very difficult to write a story about something which is so broad.
But we are supposed to relate to it.
Exactly. It is related to it, exactly, but it is one particular experience, only one. So what I would advise you is to write one story. You can do the whole exercise many times, and you can write many stories if you want to and if you have the time. But every story has to be very specific. That's why I said you are only going to be choosing one mini small part of all the work that you do. But you cannot write about everything that you do because it becomes too big. It is not possible to manage it. When we are going to be writing a case study, I would like you, or I would advise you, to focus on something which is very small. It is just a case study, which of course is related to CSA and which of course is going to give lessons about CSA, But it is not going to give all the lessons, and it is not going to give all the solutions about CSA. That is not possible. For that, you need, I don't know, 1,000 or 1,000,000 stories. And you are only going to be writing one. So this is a bit difficult, because I know that you have a lot of information, and you have been probably, or you are probably working in many, many different cases at the same time. So, but you have to choose, and you have to, in this case, just pick one, because then it's going to be easier, and then you're going to be making a story.
I have an appointment there at 9 o'clock. It's always in 9.
It's going to be more efficient. Whatever we write, I agree with you, the content has to be related, and we have to provide evidence, etc. That's what we're going to be discussing next. But don't expect to have everything about CSA, or all the solutions, or not even all the cases, or all the work that you are doing in your organization, because that is not possible. It is much easier and much more productive and much more useful, and also much better for the reader if you just focus on one story. And the best recommendation that everybody gives is to try to make that story as narrow as possible. Even if it only looks in what happened in one small district, or even if it only looks at what happened in one family, it doesn't matter. It is just a case study that illustrates what is happening in the field without pretending to show everything that is happening in the field. Yes? So, of course, we are producing, as individuals, we will be producing one story, but the advantage is that you have many different individuals. So together, you will come to a collection of nice stories, and together they will show a lot about CSA. So it is a bit like the work of ants. One small ant is doing something very small, but when you put them all together, that's when you see, yeah, a very nice collection which tells us a lot about CSA in the countries where you work.
Dr. Mercy wants to add something, maybe?
Yes, and then we continue afterwards. Yes.
I am just looking at it from probably another angle. What we have been doing, yes, as individual, as group, as an organization, it's possible to get stories out of that. But what we have experienced in the rural areas, assuming I want to tell you a story. Okay, I have worked with a group of rural women that have been using indigenous knowledge to curb climate issues, that's to solve climate problems. And I want to tell you that story. Don't you think it's also worth sharing? It's not what I'm doing, but I want to bring out the story of these women, yeah, and what they have been doing.
Of course that is possible. In this case, you're talking about an experience, but it is the experience of these women. That's no problem. Let's say that you are taking the role that they should be writing the story themselves, but in this case, you are helping them to do it, maybe because you have the time or you have the skills to do it. That's not a problem. But the idea is that you present this as an experience. And this experience, following what was asked before, is not going to solve or say everything about CSA. No, it is just one experience, which will be a sort of illustration, a case study that shows some of the problems and shows some of the solutions, but it doesn't show everything. I don't see a problem there. I think it is very interesting and we can do that. But remember that to make it even more interesting, then we put this story or the case study of these women together with other case studies. And by putting them in a collective, then we get a lot of lessons about CSA. Yes. But I would certainly suggest that when you are going to be writing the case of these ladies or these women, you do it together with them. So you go to the field, you interview them, you make sure that their voices are heard, etc., doing it in a very participatory way.
Yeah, I think Grace has raised hand since a while. Maybe, yeah, we give her the floor.
Okay, and then you let me continue afterwards.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for the training. I'm Grace from Uganda. For me, I just want to write an experience of a case where we've been researching with farmers on how to address striga weed. It has been a participatory research, and farmers have come up with sustainable solutions on how to address this problem. We have been using we have been using climate smart practices with farmers, and they have a very good story to tell to the world on how themselves have conducted research for a period of about 2 years, and how they have concluded that this is working and this is not working. So I don't know whether that would be a very good story to share.
I think it would be a very good story to share. But again, I would suggest that you focus not in general on how the research is done or on the weed problems. No, I would try. I think I would pick a few of these farmers, or maybe those living in one district, and show their story, a bit like what the previous speaker was saying, to try to present it as a case study. And then it becomes easier and it becomes more interesting to read also. So you select this, and then you try to show, if you select a few of these farmers, then you try to think why these farmers are not others. So you try to show those who have done something particularly interesting, or those who were the most motivated, or those who were doing it faster, or I don't know. No, but remember that your story, your case study, has to be more interesting than the other case studies. So if you pick one of these farmers, think a little bit, why do you pick him and not somebody else? Or why do you pick her and not the other ones? Because of the things that they have been doing. These things that they have been doing are going to be the central part of your story. Yes? And of course, of course, what we are going to see next, you are going to put it in the context of CSA. Of course, you're going to provide the evidence, and you're going to, it is not as that you're going to tell us, oh yeah, the farmer went for lunch and then the farmer did the harvest. No, you're not going to be telling anything. Of course, you are going to be focusing on the subject that we are interested in, but putting it as a case study, which makes for easy reading and for interesting reading. Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Now, if we have what you see on the screen, if you answer these questions, start filling it up. Just write down your ideas next to it. Why, where, when, what about the context? Where is it? What were the problems in the area? What did you do? What were the results? And what were the difficulties? Just list ideas as a sort of brainstorming exercise, and you fill it up, and you can just put it on a piece of paper. Do not worry about writing nicely with spelling mistakes. Do not worry about putting it ugly or pretty. It doesn't matter. Just jot down your ideas as a sort of, as I said, brainstorming first, and then as a system that helps you collect all of these ideas in the right place. Now, if you do all of this, you will realize that very soon you have a very nice description of the work that you have been doing. No, sorry, where is it? Like this, the complete description. But then we come with a problem. Where am I going? The other way. Then we come, not a problem, but something that we observe in most of the stories that we get is that they are very descriptive. I was working as editor of a magazine for a very long time. So we are used to receive millions of stories. And I can tell you that 90% of the stories that we got were a description. And this is good. It is good to have a description, but it is not enough. And this is where I would like to insist that these answers to these questions which are on the board are good, but they are not enough. And they are not enough because what the reader wants to know is not just what happened. The reader wants to know, why did it happen? Why did you do that? Why did you get those results? Why did you get so little results? Why did you have so many difficulties? So it is not just a question of listing the difficulties. It is a question of saying, why? Why was it so difficult? And this question, why, is what is missing in 90% of the articles. And now I want you to think about this a little bit, because probably many of the times that you have written an article, and most of the times that I have written an article, we forget about that. We forget about the why. And so we just make a list of, oh, this is all that I did. I did this and I did that and I did this and I did that. And I achieved this and I achieved that. And we forget to say, why? Why did I achieve that? On the basis of what? What were the factors that contributed to this? So this is what we call the analysis. And I think it is the most important part of the whole process. And this is where I would really like you to put some time on it, because as I said, the description, that's easy. The analysis is a little bit more difficult. What do we mean by analysis? When we say analysis, I'm sure all of you have gone to university, studied courses, do research. So when I ask you what is an analysis, you are going to come with a lot of very clever answers. But basically, we need to analyze because we need to show a little bit more. We need to explore. We need to reflect. We need to find reasons. We need to draw lessons. And basically, because remember from the very beginning, I said that writing an article is not just sharing information. Writing an article is generating knowledge. So what we're trying is to find new ideas and to share new ideas. And if you just make a list of the work that you did, you are not really sharing or producing new ideas. So we have to do a little bit more of thinking. Now, if I say, what is analysis? As I said, you're going to be coming with a lot of clever answers. But not to make it very complicated, doing an analysis basically means giving an opinion. I know that doesn't sound very scientific, but that's what it is. Doing an analysis is saying if what we did was good or bad, if what we did was better or worse. And most important of all, why was it better or worse? It was better because I worked good. It was worse because the inputs didn't come on time. It was good because my colleagues are fantastic. It was bad because the local government was not supportive, etc., etc., etc. When we start thinking about the why, we are able to say good or bad. And if we are doing that, we are coming with a lot more new ideas and a lot more interesting information, which is what the reader wants to find. If we just tell, we did this, we did this, we did this, probably it's interesting, but it is not new. It is something that can be found somewhere else. So we have to do this extra bit of thinking. Now, how do we do this? I would say that every day we do analysis. Every day we try to understand what we did. Every day. If you are cooking, you try to do an analysis when the food is not tasty. If you are driving around, You try to do an analysis of why do you get stuck in the traffic, or why you don't get stuck, or how is it to go quickly to the office or not. When you organize a training workshop, you always do an analysis and start thinking, why is it that all participants were falling asleep? Why is it that some people are not interested in what I'm saying? We are always doing it, but we are always doing it a bit unconsciously. We don't sit and we don't write it down. But we do it. I'm sure you are all doing it. When you are going to buy new shoes, you do an analysis and you start thinking, should I go to that shop? No, I don't go to that shop because that people, they are not very friendly. Oh, I go to that shop because that's very cheap, etc., etc. And you start thinking of all those things and you do your own analysis, but you just do it quickly in your head. Now, what I'm suggesting here is that we don't do it quickly in your head. Let us do it a little bit more in detail, more explicitly, and then it's going to be more efficient. Basically, what we need is to follow, to me at least, that this is something that helps me very much, so that's why I recommend it. Basically, we need to follow 4 steps. First, we want to select a few criteria, a few general ideas, which are going to help us say if something is good or bad. Then we need to identify indicators for these criteria. Then we need to identify the factors that help us identify the why question. And then we draw a few conclusions. Remember, let us not make it too complicated. Let us think that basically what we want to do is say good or bad. So I'm going to do the analysis of the rabbits example. I can say, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that, but that is the description. Now, if I want to go to the analysis, I have to think of myself. I want to say if those rabbits exercise is good or bad. So how do I do it? First of all, I select a few of these criteria. I want to say good or bad. What helps me? So it can be that it is good because it was a very participatory experience. Or maybe it is good because it is very sustainable. Or maybe it is good because it has a fantastic impact for the environment. Or maybe it is bad because it is not very replicable. No, I hope you're following me. So the first, if I want to say good or bad, the first thing I have to think of is to think, what are these criteria that I'm interested in? What are you interested in showing? It may be participation, it may be social impact, it may be environmental impact, or it may be efficiency, it may be gender focus, I don't know. But think for yourself a few of these ideas. And then you will realize that it becomes much easier to say good or bad, because if the rabbit exercise, the work of the rabbits was not participatory, then I can easily say, oh, it is bad. If the rabbit exercise did not have impact, then it was not very good. Are you following me?
Yes, I think we are following.
Yes. So the first is, think for yourselves a few of these ideas that are going to help you say if your experience was good or bad. Think of 4 of them. And most of the times we are always thinking of the same ones. No, we think of, as I said, social impact, environmental impact, participation, sustainability, efficiency, I don't know, relevance. I like this idea of replicability. And then I can say, yeah, these are words that help me say if something is good or bad. Now, the problem we have next is that if I say participation, that's a very good idea, but how do I measure participation? How do I see it in the field? So the rabbit exercise, was it participatory? I don't know, because I don't know how to measure participation. So then the next step is that we have to think of some indicators which are going to help me see, oh yeah, it was participatory. So then we have to think of how do you measure participation? The number of people who attended the workshop, the number of women who attended the workshop in contrast to the number of men, maybe, or maybe the number of opinions, the number of questions that people are raising. I don't know. But it is always good to think of a little bit, okay, how do I measure this? Yes? In the same. Environmental impact. Oh yeah, the rabbits, they have great environmental impact. Okay, that sounds very nice, but how do you measure the environmental impact? Is it the number of, I don't know, nitrogen in the field? I don't know, the number of species in terms of biodiversity? I don't know. You are the experts in these fields, but it's very good to start thinking, because as one of you said, you need to provide evidence. So it is not just enough to say, oh yeah, fantastic, it has a great environmental impact. That's not enough. You have to be able to demonstrate it. You have to provide the evidence. How do you measure it? Yes? So now let us say that we select environmental impact and that our indicator is the amount of nitrogen in the field. So if there is less nitrogen, it has a good environmental impact, so therefore it is good. Now comes the most interesting part of the whole exercise, which is to say the factors that contribute. So the why question. When you have the indicator, nitrogen in the field, then I would like you to tell me, why is it that the nitrogen in the field is so low or so high? What are the factors that contribute to the nitrogen in the field? And this is when you start exploring and when you start reflecting and when you start identifying ideas which you hadn't thought of before. Why is it that the nitrogen in the field is so low? Because we did a very good rotation of the crops, because the rabbits are only coming during the spring, because the facilitator was fantastic, because all the participants, I don't know, were eating the rabbits early in the morning. I don't know. But this is when we start answering the why question by trying to find out what are those factors that were helping or contributing in a positive way, and then what are the factors that were contributing in a negative way. Remember that there's always good and there's always bad at the same time. Some things are working fantastically, and at the same time, there are problems. So it is very important to try to put both. And for every one of the indicators that you have selected, you can say yes, no, good, bad, contributed positively or contributed negatively. The more you say, the more evidence you're going to be showing, the more interesting your story is going to be. And once we have all of these factors and we can write a lot for each indicator, we can write a lot of different factors. Then we have the opinions, the arguments, the evidence, which are going to help us write very nice conclusions. And then you are going to say, to give a lesson and to say, this is how you have to do with the rabbits. This is what I recommend you. And your recommendations are going to be credible because you are providing the evidence. You're going to be showing what works, what doesn't work. I know this is very short, and this is many times I've been doing this exercise of the analysis, I think, in a whole day. Now I'm trying to do it in a very few minutes. But the important thing here is, let us not make it very complicated. Once you have the description, try to think that what you want to do is to say, be able to say if your work has been good or bad. In order to do that, you need to select a few criteria that are going to help you. These criteria, like participation, social impact, etc., help you say, yes, my work is good. The problem with the criteria is that they are difficult to measure. So you have to think of indicators that help you say, oh, yes, I am participatory because blah, blah, blah. Identify a few indicators and then try to find the reasons why, the most important part. Why, thanks to what is it that you are participatory? What are the reasons why you are having a good social impact? So try to find why. Why yes, why not? That, as I said, this is the most important question, the most important part of the whole exercise of experience capitalization. Because with this, you come with interesting lessons and recommendations, and this is the actual knowledge, the new ideas that you can share. This is what the reader wants to read from you. The reader doesn't want to know what is the capital of Kampala, because he already knows it. The reader doesn't want to know that you work here or there, because probably he can find that on the internet. The reader wants to know your opinion. The reader wants you to tell him or her, why is it that this work that you're doing is so good or so fantastic? This is the evidence, and this is, as I said, what the reader wants to get from you. So you have to give it to him or to her. The more of these why answers that you give, the better your article is going to be. Yes? So then we come to this assignment, and again, I would like you to take a few minutes to do this. Think of the work that you are doing. Think of the experience that you have selected. And write down a couple of criteria. What would be your criteria for your analysis? Are you interested in participation? Are you interested in empowerment? Are you interested in social impact, etc.? Next, tell me, how do you measure this? How do you measure empowerment? Next, tell me, what are your contributing factors? So if your farmers are empowered, tell me, what are the factors that help them become empowered? What did you do that really made them empowered? And at the same time, what was it that you did that worked against it? And with that, think of a few conclusions. Yes, should we try give ourselves a few minutes and answer a few answer these questions? Everybody's silent, so I guess that you are all doing it already. Are you there?
Hello, do you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I think we will need a break.
Yes.
Yeah, it's already 2 hours and a half
yes.
training, so I think we are a bit tired. So maybe even 15 minutes break will be good.
Yes.
And also, yes. Who is speaking?
No, this is Max. Before Justin, York, thank you so much again, York, for taking us through this session. But in the previous analysis, I saw the word problems. And of course, with the introduction of experience capitalization that you did with us very well last time again, I was looking at the problems as more of banging. I wanted us, is it possible to use the word lessons, for example, which is also the heart of why? Because the why could be positive and also negative and that kind of thing. Yet the problems are really, it is that thing that didn't work. So we leave other things that could have contributed in the process.
I agree with you. If we focus on, or if we put problems, it may sound negative, that's true. The problem is that if we just say lessons, we tend to think only of the positive bits. And I would really like to encourage you to see both the things that worked and the things that didn't work, the things that you did right and the things that you didn't do so right. So to look at both sides and the factors that helped you in a positive way and the factors that prevented you from getting better results. So I'm putting problems sometimes to force us to do that. But if you can do it, for example, if you think of participation, imagine that your criteria is participation. Then you think, okay, how do I measure participation? Let us say a very simple indicator. Let us measure the number of people who join the workshop. Okay, so let us say that the number of people who work, it is, let's say, 75%. So you can think, oh, 75%, that's very high, fantastic. And you think, why did 75%? Oh, because of this, because the facilitator, because there was lunch, because we did good planning, and you think of all those good things. But at the same time, you have to think, why is it that 25% of them didn't go? So it is not really a problem, but it is looking at it from the negative side. Why is it that 25% didn't go? And then you realize, oh, yeah, some people didn't come because they didn't have internet, or because they don't understand the language, or because the subject is not so interesting. And if you look at those things, they also tell you a lot, and they can also be very useful. So it is very important to also focus on those things, even if it's only 25%. You see what I mean? So yeah, perhaps calling them problems is a bit exaggerated, but what I want is to emphasize that we have to look at it from both sides. Yes?